Tesla has informed workers at its battery factory in Sparks, Nevada, that some hourly workers will see pay increases of around 10% starting in January.
Tesla removed the Disney Plus app from its EV's in-car infotainment system. Electric then clarified that Tesla said it would be removing Disney Plus from cars where owners never used the app before. So
you better hope people have the EVs to use them, too, and that you better hope not everyone's EV is a Tesla, because nobody's buying in any of the other ones.
All that and more, so let's get to it. Tesla stock is struggling in the pre-market, down about 0.5%. The stock is sitting at $255.87, so has been experiencing some positivity as of late. What do I mean? For the week, Tesla is up over 8%. For the month, up over 9%. Year to date, Tesla has climbed up over 115%. I still have my 255 call set to expire at the end of the week on the 22nd. This thing has a break even of a little less than $260. I'm going to need it to move and move quickly if I'm going to see any kind of profit on this thing. Unfortunately, if this trend continues, your boy might just have to cut this bait.
Tesla has informed workers at its battery factory in Sparks, Nevada, that some hourly workers will see pay increases of around 10% starting in January. CNBC viewed internal materials that said workers had been informed of cost of living adjustments. Those pay increases may help Tesla stave off workers' interest in forming a union and pushing for collective bargaining in Nevada. Tesla shares, if you've been keeping track, they're sitting right at around $253 right now.
Don't get me wrong, pay increases are always welcome, but don't get it twisted. There'll be no union because of this right here. Are you telling me we're at the beginning of one of the greatest growth stories ever known to the stock market? And the harder I work, the higher my stock price will become? Effectively making me a millionaire for the duration I choose to work? Barkeep, I'll have what he's having.
sticking with the media world, the big beef between Elon Musk and Disney's Bob Iger, Josh's favorite topic, is now spilling over into your Tesla. EV blog Electric reporting that Tesla removed the Disney Plus app from its EV's in-car infotainment system. Electric then clarified that Tesla said it would be removing Disney Plus from cars where owners never used the app before. So it all seems a little petty here for Musk to, be upset about Disney spending on Twitter. And he said, I'm going to take you off of my Teslas. I mean, it's not nothing for Disney, but there's also 4 million Teslas out there. So it is a little bit of something there for them.
Yeah.
Bob Iger verse, Elon Musk verse. This is like the ultimate versus story, right? It's the two people we always talk about fighting other people, fighting each other. I think the story in and of itself, I wonder how much Tesla consumers care about what is offered on the screen.
The few times that I am charging at a supercharger, it could take anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes depending on the distance I need to travel. Hell, if I'm going super long distance, I may even just sit at that supercharger to fill up for an hour depending on where my charge is currently at. What the am I gonna do with my time at a supercharging station? There's only so much Sudoku and solitaire I can play inside the vehicle. I'm going to turn on Netflix. I'm going to turn on Disney Plus. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to cancel my Disney Plus subscription because Elon Musk and Bob Iger have a fit about advertising on X. I don't give a damn. The iPhone does the exact same thing. If people aren't using particular apps, they'll go ahead and pull them from the phone just to create more room for data. I'm sure Tesla will do this for everything in their infotainment, but Disney Plus will get the highlight because of Elon Musk telling Bob Iger and everyone else that's listening to go themselves. But apparently, this is news.
Well,
how much do you care about how many different movie options you have in your car?
People were upset that Disney Plus wasn't, you weren't able to find it readily.
So I was in a Tesla recently, and when I know you have one in your family, you charge that car up. What are you doing in the charger?
Sure.
You're watching Netflix.
That takes
Amazon
like an
Prime.
hour to charge your car.
It could, 20 minutes, even 20 minutes, you could watch an episode. So not having that option is something that people actually use it.
Yeah, and it did feel like during the New York Times Steelbook Summit, which is really when this feud between Elon Musk and Bob Iger reached a fever pitch, it felt like Bob Iger was the scapegoat for all of the companies that pulled their advertising off of X. That's just what it felt like to me in that moment.
Right.
Like Musk was just expressing his frustration to all of those companies, taking it out on Bob Iger. To go that step further, if this is true, and pull the Disney Plus, I don't know.
It gets to a point that we made when we were talking about that too, of like, why go against Bob Iger and why go against Disney? To that point, if people do want content on their electric vehicle, as I'm thinking about it, why would you pull off one of the most popular brands in America?
It's petty.
Like, why pull off Disney and make your product worse, and then I can get another EV and my kids can watch Disney while we're charging the car? It just doesn't really actually make sense from a business perspective.
Yeah.
Well, that would be true if that's what he did. You could still have Disney Plus on the vehicle. It's just not going to be an icon readily available in the infotainment system menu. I can press a button and say play Disney Plus, and Disney Plus will pop right on the screen. I just don't get it. Why make a big deal about this when there's nothing here to discuss?
Sales of electric vehicles in the United States have stalled. I don't know, EVs don't really stall, I don't think.
Very true. EVs don't stall. Odd turn of phrase now that you think about it.
Other EV manufacturers are struggling to catch up to the largest maker, Tesla, and gain some market share. Joining us now, Mark Fields, former Ford Motor Company president and CEO, as well as a CNBC contributor. Such a multifaceted discussion where I could come from on this, Mark, just in terms of the Biden administration and some of the goals or some of the mandates that we set and how those are increasingly looking at this point. I mean, they better hope about that expression that things happen gradually and then all at once, because I don't see it happening nearly as quickly as they're banking on.
For every company not named Tesla, this transition is not going to happen easily for them. That doesn't mean that the demand is not accelerating at an exponential rate. Tesla will continue to push out high-quality battery electric vehicles at around a 50% compound annual growth rate, something that hasn't been heard of in the automotive industry since about a century ago. If that doesn't tell you that the demand is ever present, I don't know what will. But the problems that Ford and GM are having, those aren't because consumers don't want EVs. Consumers are overwhelmingly disappointed with the quality of GM and Ford's battery electric vehicle. And no matter what the Biden administration expects or mandates, this transition is an economical inevitability. I'm just not so sure that Ford and GM are welcome to that party.
Well, I agree with you 100%. We've talked about this a lot over the last number of months. I mean, listen, when you think about the administration, they've, in the Infrastructure Act, let's just do a little math to kind of bring out your point. So the administration in the Infrastructure Act allocated about $7.5 billion to build chargers, 500,000 chargers. Very few have been built so far. And part of that is just the regulatory hoops you have to go to build them. And part of it's the supply chain. But if you look at a lot of the projections say, listen, by 2030, to meet the supposed demand, the U.S. is supposed to have about anywhere between 1.2 million and 1.4 million chargers. Today, the U.S. has about 180,000. So let's take that lower number, the 1.2 million, Joe. That basically says every day between now and 2030, because they say by 2030 you need 1.2 million, you have to be installing every day between now and 2030, 465 chargers per day. I mean, the math doesn't work. And, I think the automakers have recognized that. That's why they pulled back.
You know why the math doesn't work? Is because the only company that is building effective chargers happens to be Tesla. With or without anyone else, Tesla plans to deliver 20 million vehicles in a single year by 2030. I guarantee you, Tesla is not perturbed by the situation. They're going to get off their and build all the chargers necessary for them to accomplish their goals. That is the stark difference between Tesla and every other legacy automotive company. They see a problem, they don't shy away from it or run from it, they go tackle it. And it'd be nice if Ford and GM had that same mentality, because this wouldn't even be a problem or an issue at all. Instead, they'd rather retreat into their shell, continue doing what they've been doing, status quo. This is how we've made our money. Forget about the massive growth story, extremely high mega cap of Tesla. There's no way we can be disrupted, right?
As we all know, over time, the industry here is going to transition to electric vehicles, but it's not going to transition in the time frame everybody originally expected. And that's why you're seeing the automakers pull back on their investments.
Just gives them the excuse to drag their heels. Meanwhile, Tesla's going to eat their lunch.
And everybody says that, yeah, we know that sooner or later we are going to. So that's a fact. That's a fact. I mean, up to this point, Mark, and I know I'll get flack for saying it, but the world we live in right now was made possible by fossil fuels. And the world is unbelievable when you can fly to China and you do this. And you think of the amount of leisure time that we have, how many people are either, warm in the winter or cool in the summer, and you just look at the benefits of what it is given us. You're absolutely sure that within a certain amount of time, the entire world is going to be electrified at that point.
Well, Joe, it's a fact. Obviously, fossil fuels are a depleting resource. So at some point, we're going to run out.
Ding, 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 ding. Tell him what he's won, Johnny. Your mother. Right. It'd be different if these fossil fuels could be recycled immediately. But they can't. They're fighting wars about this resource. There has to be something we can do to create a sustainable energy economy in order to prevent loss of life and the collapse of civilization should there become a shortage of fossil fuels. It ain't gonna be today. It might not even be in the next 50 years. But there will come a day where we run out of this exhaustible resource.
That sounds Malthusian to me. I mean, okay, natural gas? When do you see us running out of natural gas? And you, well, I mean, I understand, but we did. Malthus. No one who's ever made a bet, a Malthusian bet, has ever made money on anything. Peak oil, the guy finally died. The guy who kept talking about how that was going to happen. Peak oil keeps getting pushed out years at a time. We get more fuel efficient. Maybe it won't be oil, heavy, light, sweet, whatever it is, but natural gas or some type of hydrocarbon.
Well, listen, on natural gas, again, you need to transition. If you're talking natural gas, there's a lot of investments that the automakers need to make to actually make that happen. And then you lay on top of it a new distribution system, right? You have gas stations today. Now you're getting electric chargers. Now you're assuming, hey, we can build out an infrastructure of natural gas vehicles. I think, listen, I agree. It's going to take a long time. Here's an interesting factoid, Joe. When you look at the tier one powertrain suppliers, they essentially stopped working on next generation powertrains about a year ago when the automakers said, hey, listen, we're going to be investing primarily in electric vehicles going forward. So when you look at the fuel economy improvements that have traditionally come out of these powertrain suppliers to support better fuel economy, to support the EPA regulations, that's going to get tougher going forward because you're basically going to be, unless these tier one suppliers start reinvesting in next generation ICE powertrains, you're not going to have as much improvements. And that's why the government, I believe, is going to have to back off some of these, very ambitious targets, because not only will the technology not allow you to get there in the time frame, but consumer demand won't.
Yeah, and then you're going to have all your charging stations, because we're going to make 400 every day, like you said, and then you better hope people have the EVs to use them too, and that you better hope not everyone's EV is a Tesla, because nobody's buying in any of the other ones at that point. You better hope that the recent UAW wage gains don't make the transition impossible from without the government stepping in and doing it again and bailing out the entire industry.
No bailouts. You know what you need to do. You've got to do it. No bailouts.
Well, on the cost side, to your point, if you look at let's use a snapshot of today. So most people buying EVs today are wealthy consumers.
I'm wealthy? This news to me.
If you look at the third quarter, about 25% of luxury car sales were EVs. On non-luxury cars, it was about 3%. So, clearly right now, the average cost of an EV, and I know we're talking averages, is about 25% higher than an ICE vehicle. And that's down 20% since the beginning of the year and all the price cuts that's happened. So if you kind of boil that down to, the family that's sitting across the kitchen table and wondering, what they're going to buy, if you assume an 8% interest rate, more or less, that difference of a cost in an ICE vehicle, average ICE vehicle versus an EV, it's about $275 a month. The challenge for the industry is over time, how do they equalize that? So it takes the cost issue off the table. But then you get to the infrastructure issue and the charging infrastructure.
Yep.
So most consumers are going to say, hey, listen, when you solve the cost issue and when you solve the charging infrastructure issue, then I'll consider it. Right. And I think that's why it's going to take longer.
None of this stuff is going to happen overnight. But if you drag your heels, it won't happen at all. Tesla can't worry about regulation. They can't worry about what their competitors are doing or not doing. They can only do what's best for their company. Don't worry, we're not trying to create a walled garden to bludgeon our competitors. We need you to help in this transition. We don't want you to lose hope. But damn, we can't build the cars for you. Damn sure ain't gonna try to trick the consumer into thinking your vehicles are just as good as ours either. The one thing you better do is figure it out before those Chinese startups and BYD get over here. And if you don't think they're coming, you must be sucking the glass. Their market share in Mexico is increasing. Their market share in the EU increasing. It won't be long now before we see these Chinese startups and BYD over here on our streets here in America. Before that happens, GM, Ford, they need to get their together. In conclusion, Tesla to raise the hourly wages over there at Giga 1. Disney Plus apparently is being removed from vehicles, or are they just being removed from the menu? Either way, is it petty? I don't give a shit. And apparently, the EV transition is going to be way too hard. Daddy, I can't do it. Your expectations of me, way too high. Okay, that's fair. Just don't be asking for no handout later. Get your act together before those bullies from across the Pacific Ocean come over here and start taking your lunch money. That's all I've got for you today. Be easy. Peace.